As a species, the most impactful way we have developed to share information, to share knowledge, to entertain, to create recall, to teach is through story. And for me, the ability to enable somebody to see what you mean. There's no greater way of sharing knowledge to create understanding. If somebody can visualize and understand and simply see what you mean. We're all storytellers. And I haven't met somebody who can't tell a story, but I have met a lot of people, Lars, who choose not to in a business context. So I looked at what's the most effective, impactful way in today's context to share that story. And for me, video was the only way.
Hey everyone, welcome to LinkedIn Presents Redefining Work. I'm your host, Lars Schmidt. And today, I'm really excited to be joined by my friend all the way from Dublin, Rob Mac Giolla Phadraig. And Rob and I have collaborated in the Talent Summit event that he holds on an annual basis. We've had a lot of fun in Dublin. I had a chance to have whiskey in Irish Parliament in a bar underneath the building, thanks to my friend Rob. So we're going to get into that and a lot more. But Rob, good to have you here, man. What do you want the audience to know about you before we kind of jump into your story and what you're building with SkillStack?
Yeah, I'd love to share the story of SkillStack. I'd love to talk about what makes it unique, I guess, and ultimately the types of problems it can solve, because this one, Lars, runs deep with me. It feels in many ways like my life story, and it has a real kind of sense of a just cause in terms of its impact or potential impact. So I'm excited to bring it to the world. I'm excited to speak about it. But ultimately, it's great to hang out with you for an hour, Lars, and good to catch you up.
Yeah, right. So this is the beauty of hosting a podcast is a lot of these are just me getting a chance to catch up with my friends and let all of you watch and listen along. So, Rob, I want to go back to the beginning. I mean, obviously, we knew each other through the talent space. You've been working in this domain for a while, but I want to rewind the clock a little bit. Go back to young Rob growing up. What were you like as a kid? What was your upbringing like?
Yeah, my upbringing was, I guess, a large family in North County Dublin, Lars. And probably like a lot of folks, it was kind of week to week, month to month for my folks. My dad was an artist. So he was the typical gig worker back before it was a term, Lars. And his work was very patchy. So that gave us instability in terms of, I guess, finances into the home. My mom is a phenomenal person, Lars, an amazing woman. And she drove us hard. Like she had a big belief in education and hard work. I might touch on some of the stories that she shared with us when we were younger around role modeling, and ultimately led into the story of SkillStack, but we'll probably get to that. But for me, like my mom, she shipped us all off to school out in South County Dublin to a really high-performing school. And I thought South County Dublin was the land of opportunity, milk and honey, Lars. I didn't realize I'd end up kind of cleaning my school. So again, we went out, me and my twin brother, and we clean our school every day after our pals left school. And if you talk about character for me, you talk about humility, you talk about, I guess, the value of work and the value of what you're lucky to be given in life. I think that's where my story starts. I think that's where it probably shaped the future me, I guess, in terms of, some of my imperfections, my insecurities, my probably chip on my shoulder, my drive for, I guess, I don't know if style, this is the right word, but certainly a drive to succeed. It would have stemmed, I think, from there. And ultimately to give choice, options, independence, to fit in, perhaps, Lars, is probably what we all want, isn't it?
Yeah.
As kind of prickly as kind of imperfect as those years were, They were kind of tough years, but certainly formative in creating me and who I am today.
Yeah. Well, so the cleaning aspect, was that a requirement of the school? Was that a requirement of your mom? Was that how I imagine most students, if given the choice or an opportunity to get out of that, they probably would. You did not. Well, where did that kind of come from?
Yeah, I did not choose that. So again, it was driven from my mom. So again, she befriended the principal of the school. They had a need at a point in time. My mom offered her service. She hadn't worked up to that point. So she roped us in as the cleaning staff, I guess. So we spent every Saturday cleaning, while my older brother studied Latin as an additional extracurricular subject. And then the school lost their contract cleaners. So my mom offered me and my brother as that solution. So we stayed back every evening after school and we cleaned up our school friends' mess, quite frankly. So we're 2-3 hours after school, we'd get home late, and then we'd repeat that cycle the next day. But look, it gives you a real dose of understanding that, in order to buy school books, in order to live, everyone needs to pitch in, So it was, as unglamorous as it was at the time, it tells a great story now.
Yeah. Look, there's a character building aspect of that in a couple of ways. And I think it also understanding that what hard work and labor is at that young age can also probably help you, maybe have more clarity over what you might want to do in your career and in your future, right? And having that appreciation, understanding of all sorts of roles and requirements. I think back to my days in college, so a little bit, older, but my dad, ran a business in South Florida.
He's a lot older. Go on.
A lot older. Okay, fair enough. A lot older. But I was in school at, Florida State, and my father every summer, I'd go back and I'd work at my father's business, and they did a mix of things. They did auto repair, trailer hitch installation, U-Haul rental, but lots of, very physical manual things. And my dad would save the least desirable projects for the summer to give me when I came back, because he wanted me to know what that hard work was like. And he wanted to make sure that I had the character of understanding, hey, I'm in college because I'm trying to create, I was the first person in my family to go to college. So the first, to try to create an opportunity. And if I didn't take that seriously, this was the work that I could be doing. And it was hard, backbreaking work, and it gave me a deep appreciation for it, but it also helped kind of crystallize, I think, what I wanted to do in my future. So I think there's definitely lessons to be had, I think, in that hard work, even if it's something you might not choose.
What did you think at the time? You didn't feel that at the time. What's your feeling at the time?
No, you get that perspective later. At the time, I'm thinking, oh my God, why are you doing this to me, right? Why am I doing this work that nobody else will do, right? I mean, this is crawling in the attic to lay wire and fiber cables, in Florida, South Florida summer. This was the worst project, and I did this twice. They had a trailer, a tractor trailer, a big truck tractor trailer full of trailer hitches, because that was a big thing that they did, is install those. And trailer hitches weigh between, 30 to 60, 70 pounds. They're significant. And there were hundreds of them in a stifling hot tractor trailer. And my job is I had to take every one of them out of the trailer, inventory them, label them, and then put them back in an organized manner. And I'll never forget that. I'll never forget the sweat, the heat, the fatigue, getting steel splinters in my fingers where the welds weren't, tight. And it was just, I think then I was, miserable. And of course I was, frustrated and why am I having to do this? But I think with the benefit of hindsight, I know exactly what my dad was doing. You can't realize that in the moment, as I imagine you couldn't in that moment kind of cleaning schools. But I think with the benefit of hindsight, you have that perspective and that appreciation.
Yeah, but look at the ingredients that go in. And again, seeds are planted that blossom in later life.
Yeah.
Again, I'm a firm believer that now for us was that a necessity. I don't think there's any grandiose design. But again, looking back, it would have taught us humility to a huge extent. It would have kind of maybe, made us not be included perhaps, and given me a drive perhaps to be included or to be part of the the gang, successful, whatever way you want to kind of describe that now, you know. So yeah, it's deeply rooted in me. And I find myself telling the story a lot, and not to give like a working class hero kind of story, but it's part of my origin story and actually runs deep with the origin of SkillStack, as I mentioned. But again, we will get to that and we'll draw that line.
You know, I do want to get into SkillStack, but I want to, before we even get into an overview of what Skill does, I want to talk to you about a moment that we talked about a couple of weeks back when you were getting ready to have your official launch event. And you shared a story with me about how your mom had, kind of identified, leaders that would be good role models for you and your twin and your family growing up. If you could, you can be like them. If you can be like them, then you'll be on the right track. And I don't even want to take the story from you. I'd love to have you just share that, because it was such a special moment, even hearing you describe it before it happened. I'd love to have you just kind of share the audience, of just walk them through, that, and then really just what it meant for you to be able to share that moment on the launch day, to kind of bring those individuals together, to see your mom, just, I imagine, overwhelmed with pride and what you've built and what you've become. So I'd love to just have you share that story.
Yeah. So I guess in growing up, like, that is my backstory. And my mom held up two role models to us. She had two chance encounters, Lars. Now, I have a twin brother. So this is a classic story of nature versus nurture. His name is
right.
So in growing up, we had a politician called for a door. He was canvassing. His name was Morris Manning. He called for a door. My mom at the time, she described him as him being like a Kennedy, right? And she would have seen him as, this kind of impactful politician. He was previously an academic. And she used to tell us, if you work hard enough in school, you could be an academic or you could be a politician like Morris Manning. The following Christmas, Lars, he dropped a food hamper to our home, and he became a bit of a legend in our household. At the same time, she had a chance encounter. She was out for dinner with my dad for their anniversary. And at the table next to them, there was a couple. And the husband of the couple was a man called Martin Naughton. So Martin Naughton ultimately built a huge global business called Glendimplex. It became the number one kind of oil heating manufacturing business in the world. He owns the Marion Hotel in Dublin. He's one of the most respected business leaders and philanthropists here in Ireland. He's a trustee of Notre Dame University also. So my mom used to tell us, if you work hard enough in school, you could be a businessman like Martin Naughton. So interestingly, me and my twin, we followed these stories. So my twin brother, Lars Kev, he went deep into the world of academia. He became a dentist. He now teaches dentistry in Trinity College and is like a world specialist in pediatric special needs dentistry. I stumbled into business, and all I could do was let my mom down, because I was never going to be like Martin Naughton. But yeah, they're the stories that we followed, and kind of two of those have come full cycle since. So at the launch of SkillStack just over 2 weeks ago, I had kind of 200 business and HR leaders convene. I had some of my faculty speak in the Irish Film Institute here in Dublin. I have my kids in, and I have my kids work on the lead up to it. So talk about values and trying to recreate some values that we feel kind of stood up to us in later life, trying to instill some of those. So it's like a big movie theater. So I have my kids go buy all the kind of the sweets and the goodies and the popcorn, assemble all the treat bags and have them there in the morning of the event to give out all the treats to the guests who came. But I brought my mom along as well, and my mom was there. And one of the thrills for me in my life, Lars, was in later life, befriending both of these role models, Morris Manning and Martin Naughton. And I ultimately got them to meet with my mom, and I invited both of them to the launch in Dublin 2 weeks ago. So for me, that was the moment of the day. That's been one of the highlights of my life, Lars, quite frankly. And I asked my sister, I said, do you remember this story of the food hamper? And she told me I do. It became a big story. And I remember mom telling it for years and years and years. I said, what was in it? And she said to me, she was, Rob, but we opened it. We didn't recognize the food. There was caviar and smoked salmon. We threw it in the bin. It was a great story years ago. So we never ended up eating the food in the end. But yeah, it was a thrill for me, Lars, to get them together to meet with my mom.
Yeah. I mean, what a special moment to just kind of share that with your mom. And I can just imagine the pride that she had in that moment, seeing, her son build this thing and make these connections that were once kind of set as like the North Star of what you can achieve. Let's talk a bit more about SkillStack. Like, give an overview of the platform. I'm a huge fan of origin stories. So like, when was the seed planted that this was the thing you kind of mentioned? This is like the culmination of your life's work. So I'd love to just hear a bit more about how this came to be. And then if you could just give us an overview of the platform itself.
Yeah, so I was 23 years in the staffing business. So I would have built the third largest staffing company here in Ireland with two colleagues and the team. We sold that business to a French staffing group, and I finished the earnout last year. So in tandem, you and I, we collaborated on Talent Summit, which is, again, one of the largest HR leadership conference series here in Europe. So I've been deeply immersed in the kind of talent world, the talent space. When I finished up last year, I've had a desire to go again, and a desire to build something with real meaning and real impact. And the two stories that I just shared with you, they ran with me after I'd finished up. And I took the month off last July. I went to Thailand. And again, once my context changed, a lot changed in my world, a lot of my thought process, my sense of identity and everything that comes with who you've built yourself to be, I guess, as an adult. I spent the month with the family, and I found myself sharing some of these stories with my kids. And again, I reflected back, and for me, looking at how my twin brother learned what he learned, which is through classical education, and how I learned what I learned through trial and error in business. And ultimately, it was other people's stories that I developed this range or blend of skills from. So I found myself remembering the moral of the story in the moment, trying to apply the moral of the story, making mistakes, iterating, improving. And ultimately, I developed this blend of skills that served me and served my family well. And that's the concept of SkillStack. It's a stack of skills that I learned through story. And once applied, that improved my work performance, therefore my working world, and therefore the world of my family. So the real purpose of SkillStack is to unlock, I guess, performance skills, but ultimately to improve working lives of people. And that feels like my story, as I said, into a business. So it runs deep with me, Lars. So what does it look like? It's short form video learning. And I look back and I've been privileged to work with you and a lot of people we know over the years, like real global thought leaders on a range of topics. I mapped out the moments that drive performance for individual contributors and for leaders in an average kind of business cycle. And I invited people that I've learned from and whose learning has impacted me and those around me most. And I built a faculty, Lars. So I built a faculty of 20, and I asked them to come to Dublin to tell stories, to teach the skills, to drive performance across those 48 moments that I described. So I brought in an award-winning documentary making team, and we've developed and we've produced beautiful content that's entertainment meets learning through storytelling.
Yeah, you were kind enough to share some of the example courses and content with me, and to be honest, like I was saying, and I'm sharing this with you for the first time because I hadn't seen them until until between our last chat and this chat. But you mentioned kind of bringing in a documentary kind of filmmaking crew to film this, and I think one of the things we talked about earlier was I think Masterclass has been kind of set a bar in terms of like that cinematic quality of learning. And I think that you are at that same level, like just watching some of the courses from the set design to the lighting, to the editing. We are, and I've lately, I've become a bit more personally hobbyist in terms of, filmmaking and trying to learn some of that myself. And, it's humbling when you watch a video like that to realize how little you actually know and how much you still have to learn, which is great. And that's how, that makes me feel. But just the quality, the stories, the narrative, the format, it's clear how much intention you've put into that. And so just, hat tip on that, because I think when you look at video, learning content, skills content, however you want to frame it, there's some that are, not produced. There's some that it's kind of produced. And then there's this pinnacle. And I think the fact that you've achieved that pinnacle level of quality out of the gates with your inaugural kind of group of, skills courses is quite an achievement. So just a, quick hat tip on that. Why that format? Like, was there, obviously you had an idea of doing kind of story-based, skill development and learning. What did you always know that you wanted to have that kind of, cinematic story, delivery vehicle for the courses you're creating?
So I was always committed to the story component. So the unique pedagogy is the storytelling. So look, thanks for that feedback. That is high praise coming from you, Lars, and I genuinely appreciate that. As a species, the most impactful way we have developed to share information, to share knowledge, to entertain, to create recall, to teach is through story. And for me, the ability to enable somebody to see what you mean. There's no greater way of sharing knowledge to create understanding. If somebody can visualize and understand and simply see what you mean. So as a medium, for me, that was the most impactful way that we could depart the information. We could create recall in the moment and create that deja vu moment. And we're all storytellers. And I haven't met somebody who can't tell a story, but I have met a lot of people, Lars, who choose not to in a business context. So I looked at what's the most effective, impactful way in today's context to share that story. And for me, video was the only way. And given what we're going through, and if content of learning is king, the context is the kingdom. So we're pushed for time. What are we naturally going to engage with? Like something that's easy, intuitive, that fits into our world, never mind our working world, and something that had, real entertainment value. So again, I wanted to assemble great storytellers with great stories to tell, but those stories have impact, and then to produce it and to curate it in a way that feels world class. So there's a lot out there, as we know, Lars. You produce super content, and there's a lot of free content out there. But if you think about the experience for the learner, this is a business-to-business model. So if you went to one of your team members and said, great, we're going to share some online resources with you, we're going to give you some video content, go to any of the free resources there. Here's a little shovel. It's like a pick and mix. You go, you pick, you choose on demand, and you curate your own, and you learn, you develop those skills you need to perform and knock yourself out. It's not a great experience, quite frankly. So if you went to somebody with a premium box of chocolates that's packaged in a beautiful way, the impact for them in terms of the investment, the value, and in terms of the expectation around the content inside that box, it elevates completely. So we knew we wanted to play in this end of the marketplace, as far away, as free as possible, but to have something that was going to be consumed. If we look at the challenges of video learning, for example, so a corporate might buy, a LinkedIn Learning, for example, or a masterclass or a BBC Maestro, and some super world-class content in all of those platforms. The challenge quite often is who's accountable for the consumption of that learning if it's not curated, if it's not directed. Often we're left to self-direction when it comes to engaging with this content once it's been presented to us. I wanted a bottom-up desire of people who really saw this as something that was that really had a wow moment, that really was going to engage them. And it was captured quite beautifully by probably 2 pieces of feedback I received in the last week, Lars. So one of them was a person, one of the early adopters said, I binged it as I would Netflix. I was seduced by the content. The next day in work, I found myself in several moments applying the learning that had significant impact for others. Another piece of feedback I got was, it feels like TED meets Masterclass and a personal coach. It feels like a wise friend sharing stories with me for impact and knowing that I trust in my wise friend. And I thought, I couldn't articulate that as a vision. I couldn't articulate that as
right.
experience.
I hope you got that written down somewhere to put in some of your marketing materials.
I need to use it. I know. Literally, I wrote it down yesterday. Somebody posted on LinkedIn, and somebody else shared the other piece in an email with me. And again, I haven't got the permission just yet to kind of to reference the individual, but those are their words. And I thought, what magical impact. And again, thinking about the marketing material, like if it's just enough content, which we're all chasing, so trying to get that balance right. The duration of the videos, Lars, run from 8 minutes to 33 minutes. So they're tight enough. Just for the individual, you can stack and curate the skills for cohorts, levels, or individuals. And just in time, it finds the learner in the moment where the learning is needed most. But ultimately, Lars, all of this has a real just cause. Again, if it has a part of the impact that this type of application of learning has had in my family, I hope that to bring that to millions of people around the world.
Yeah. Well, I won't ask you for a favorite course or faculty member, because that's not fair. And, I'm not going to do that, but I will ask you, obviously you've had a chance to watch all of the content. I'm sure you're behind the scenes and some of the, filming of the content. I'd like you to share one moment from a course that stuck with you. And I imagine there were multiple moments. So maybe the most profound where you were watching that, whether during the, the recording process or in the, looking at the drafts, the video, where there was something that was shared that just completely stopped you in your tracks. And it's the kind of thing that you're still thinking about today.
Can I share 2 with you?
I'll give you 2. I'll split this in 2. I will accommodate.
Yeah. Okay, excellent. The first one was decision making. So in an average day in business, we make hundreds of decisions. Most of them are small, some medium, and very rarely a big one. But every decision has an impact. And Margaret Heffernan, the award-winning author and TED speaker, she is phenomenal. There are people in your life, Lars, you know this, you've worked with a lot of kind of global thought leaders in your time. And some people's thinking challenges what you think. They inspire you, they motivate you, but you remember and they leave a trace on you forevermore.
Yeah.
Margaret Heffernan for me is one of those people. She was one of the first phone calls I made when I decided on this journey. So Margaret has developed a range of content with me across leadership and across diversity and a range of power skills. So she developed good decision making. So it's a short course on good decision making. And the learning for me in directing that one, Lars, was not to focus on the outcome of the decision, but to invest in the process through which the outcome is reached. And she simply shared a couple of stories that brought this to life and hit me like a power punch between the chest. So immediately she challenged me, gave me a whole new way to look at decision making. But ultimately, she argued, what is it we want in all decisions? So although people don't agree with the outcome of the decision, we want people to at least accept the process through which the decision was reached. And an investment in bringing stakeholders along that journey with you and knowing that their voice was heard, valuing diversity of opinion. We need that in today's world more than anything. But understanding that, valuing it, and actually giving voice to values, giving voice to people's values, giving them freedom of expression in a world that's polarized, where we're now looking to restrict them bringing all of themselves to work. So the more we invest in that, the more just our decision will be, and the more we'll achieve legitimacy in every decision we make. So if you want to make decisions as an individual contributor that people will accept, or if you want to bring people on the road with you, you want them to see every decision you make as being legitimate. And if I add 2 additional component pieces that empowers that, there's an additional skill stack on building empathy and compassion. Like, this is a skill we can develop. And the point that was shared through Barbara Nugent on that skill stack, Lars, was not to look at it from a point of empathy, not to look at it through the other person's lens, but to consider a third person's lens, and that third person being your most vulnerable loved one. How you would hope they were treated in that moment, in that scenario. It gives you a whole different perspective on appreciating empathy, being compassionate. Compassion is the action we take in knowing that level of empathy. So if you understand that component, and say if that's an emotion that goes into a decision. The other thing is data. So cognitively, how do we think critically? How do we understand how we think? And for me, the skill stack on critical thinking and understanding the process through which we think, understanding how we feel, self-regulation, emotional intelligence, paired with the process that Margaret argues in her skill stack. There are 3 component pieces and 3 power skills that will radically change how anyone makes decisions from the moment they watch it. So that's one. Now, I brought 3 to 1, okay? So I packaged that one. The other one was a question. It was a skill stack actually on critical thinking. And the thing that stuck with me was the power of questioning. So I worked in staffing for 23 years. I was a professional interviewer like you were in your former life, Lars. I thought I understand how to ask questions. So she's a professor and an author, Valerie Pierce. She did the critical thinking skill stack for me. And she said, Rob, just think about the question you ask. Visualize a search bar, the tab in a search engine like Google. The word you put into that search engine is what will deliver the answer to your question. So the use of language when it comes to questions is very, very powerful. And somebody else said, just remember the acronym TED, tell, explain, describe. So I tried that. And I had a scenario where I was facing a big crisis actually at my Talent Summit conference. They laid out 500 seats in an arena where we were expecting 2,000 participants. And I had 2 hours to go till we opened up for business. And I went up to the event organizer and I went to ask a question. I paused, I visualized that search bar, and I changed the language in the question so I could leave it open. I asked them, how could we change the setup to bring in an additional 1,500 chairs? That person went on to describe the process through which we would go to get there, as opposed to saying we can't do it. And once they opened it up, I said, that's great. So why can't we do that? The person said to me, look, we don't have time or resource. So we got to the problem much quicker through asking the right question. We couldn't change the time, but I had the people to help them with the resourcing. We got an extra 1,500 seats into the arena that morning. People come in at 9 o'clock, Lars, didn't know we were in crisis all morning. And the answer to that problem was a very simple visual deja vu moment where I just saw the search bar. I paused, I asked the right question to open it up, to identify the root cause of the problem in order to fix it. 2 very powerful skills that we could apply tomorrow and would impact every day and help us make better decisions and ask better questions.
Yeah. Well, I like the framing of the skills that are being developed. Like these are both business skills and life skills, right? Negotiating is not purely a business skill. That's a life skill, right? The ability to think critically, ask the right decisions and be mindful of like the context through which you're asking them to help, get, especially in a scenario like that, it would have been easy for you to have been frustrated to have a frustrating way of saying, how do we make this happen? This is my event. This is going to be a failure. It's your fault, right? To kind of be combative.
Sorry, no, it didn't work.
Yeah. So you said, all right, we're going to redo this. We're going to redo this. I mean, look, human tendency, I get why you would feel that way. But also, I think, the fact that you now had a tool to kind of come back and reframe how you ask that question, then it's like, let's come together to find a solution, not like, I'm pissed, it's your fault, fix this, right? Because then somebody's automatically in a defensive posture and you probably wouldn't have arrived at that answer, right? So I think that the way that you framed it in that search box method, allowed them to say, okay, well, you're trying to solve this with me, right? And it probably got you to the outcome that you wanted and that you ultimately landed on. So what if listeners and viewers want to learn more about SkillStack, where can they do so? Where's the best place for them to go?
Yeah, the website, so skillstack.ie. So again, I'm obviously wearing the brand of my t-shirt, Lars. So skillstack.ie. And you mentioned two interesting points there. So the question of feedback and how we frame feedback or share perspective. So our common friend, AJ Thomas, is on our faculty. So that was an introduction you made to me a number of years back. And we've all developed great friendships off the back of that. I had her in Dublin and she's developed some content as well. And one of them was actually giving and receiving effective feedback. Such a powerful skill stack. She is amazing, an amazing storyteller. So she's developed that piece for me. And then negotiation skills. So we've developed a skill stack, Lars, and we've sought different sources of influence and different worlds to bring into our faculty. So we have the former Prime Minister of Ireland, Bertie Ahern. He's a 3-time serving Taoiseach, we call the Prime Minister here in Ireland. So he has delivered and developed a skill stack on collaborative negotiation. And he simply tells behind the scenes stories of negotiating the peace process in Northern Ireland that ultimately led to bringing peace to Ireland. It's a fascinating conversation piece. And there's stories that aren't out in the public domain. It feels like a National Geographic kind of documentary, short form, peppered with moments of super impactful skills to negotiate in a very collaborative, practical way that are, as you say, they're applicable to every dimension of your life, not just work.
Right. I mean, again, reinforcing the point that these aren't necessarily just business stories or skills. And I think obviously that type of a story, an anecdote on negotiation, like the stakes of that kind of negotiation are quite a bit more than, working with a new vendor and trying to get a price down, right? So it's like the context, taking it out of purely a business context and putting it in, geopolitical, social, familial, whatever it may be. I think from a learning perspective, that just, it allows it to hit home even more because it is consistent with the idea of telling stories and building skills through stories. So I'm excited to see where you take this. Congratulations on the formal launch, skillstack.ie. Definitely check this out. And if listeners want to connect with you directly, is LinkedIn the best way to do so?
I think LinkedIn is best. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, Rob, good luck with this. Keep the stories flowing, and I'm excited to see how this grows.
Thanks, Lars. And Lars, I'd like to share one comment if you don't mind.
Please.
I know you've obviously announced your next play and next chapter. So I too have been deeply immersed in this world. And I just want to thank you on behalf, certainly of my community and our community here in Europe. You've been so generous in setting up the platforms and sharing your network. And again, I think I called you a HR influencer when I first met you. I've come to understand that influence has been for nothing but good, and it's added tremendously to our community. What you've done has shared so much knowledge, network, know-how to so many people in our industry, and you've elevated the industry over the last 10 plus years, Lars. You'll be missed. You'll be missed. I'm looking forward to seeing what your next chapter brings because I trust in the author, Lars. Thank you for all you've done for me, for our community here and the global HR community. You will be missed, and I hope you don't go too far from us.
Yeah, well, that is kind and appreciated, and you won't have to miss me. I won't be disappearing. I will, I will find a range of outlets. But yeah, I think the podcast and Fast Company column and things like that. My ability to kind of tell stories through those platforms, I expect that will continue. But we'll see. But no matter what, regardless of the tools that I will have, my desire to elevate this field will not change, and I will find ways to continue to do so. So thank you for the kindness. And again, thank you for the work that you have done and will continue to do to elevate this field as well.
Thank you, my friend.
All right, Rob, be good, man, and good luck with everything.
Appreciate it. Thanks, Lars.